All right, are you guys ready to get started? Perfect, give me a big thumbs up if you're ready to start. Hello everybody, my name is Miss Tellier, and today we're gonna be talking about part 2 of communication. Last week was how I look. This week is gonna be how I listen. All right, we're gonna start to how we listen. All right, so I'm gonna pick a couple of readers to go through the first few paragraphs, and then we're gonna talk about each piece in between. Now, how we listen might not sound right away like a piece of communication because we're not talking, right? But communication is not always just us being the one who's talking, but sometimes it's letting somebody else have the chance to talk and listening and learning from what they have to say, right? So who wants to read this first paragraph here?
Listening is perhaps the most important aspect of communication. Great communicators have always been great listeners. The famous philosopher Socrates said, "The person who listens is the person who controls the communication." If we consider that we are all born with 2 ears and one mouth, it's logical to conclude that we are meant to listen more and talk less.
Good job, Mr. All right, so that piece is super important, right? I'm sure you've heard that saying before, right? 2 ears and 1 mouth. If all we do is talk all the time, is that really being a leader? No, right? In order to be a leader, we need to be able to learn from other people and understand other people first, right? Can I teach you something if I don't have it? If I don't have good discipline, can I teach you how to have good discipline? No, right? So, especially when we're young, we need to learn from other people first by listening to them and what they have to say. By the way, people are a lot more likely to want to follow your lead if you show them that you care first, right? Our instructors say all the time, people don't care how much you know unless they know how much you care first. Does that make sense? Good. Who can read the next paragraph? Who wants to read? We're all going to go. You might as well raise your hand. Mr. Jordy, can you read it for me? Can you see it on the screen? Perfect. So second paragraph.
It's very important to
Distinguish.
differentiate between hear and listen. We hear all sounds that are within the reach of hearing capacity, but we actually listen to only a part of what we hear. Listen is a choice. We choose what to listen to. To listen, to pay attention, and respond to what we hear. A cognitive communication is a two-side tangent. We must listen to others and we must go them to us.
Good job, Mr. Jordy. All right. Awesome job. There's a lot of big words in there too, and you stuck through it the whole thing. Nice job. All right, so what this paragraph is talking about is there's a difference between listening to something and hearing something, right? For example, if you guys all open your ears really quick, what are some things that you guys can hear in your house right now besides just me? Can you guys hear, can anyone hear cars outside?
No.
No? What do you guys have around? Tell me, what can you hear right now in your house? Do you hear the washing machine, the fridge? Do you hear your parents talking? Go ahead, Ms. Ira.
I can hear my mom talking in the phone.
Your mom talking on the phone, right? What else? Mr. Do you hear anything? You got those noise canceling headphones. He's focused in.
Yeah, I can hear my washing machine. It's really loud.
Right, so we can hear lots of things around us, but there's only one thing that we're really honed in and listening to and paying attention to at a time, right? So for example, when we're at school and the teacher's talking to us, whether we're talking about math or science, whatever we're learning, in order to really learn and soak in that information, we need to pay attention to that, right? If I'm at school doing math, but I'm thinking about going home and playing Roblox, or I'm listening to my friend tapping the pencil next to me, am I really listening? No, and we learn best from other people when we focus and we listen to that one thing. So it's important. It's not just hearing, but it's paying attention. Does that make sense? Good. And the better focus that we have, the better we can be leaders and communicators to other people. So great job, Mr. Jordy. Mr. Can you read this next big paragraph for me?
Sure. The first step to develop good listening skills is to listen to ourselves. We all have an inner voice that is constantly talking to us. It tells us what to do and what not to do, what's right and what's wrong. This inner voice often gives us good advice and helps us make the right choices, but sometimes it expresses negative and limited ideas. Sometimes, for example, it tells us when we're not good enough for that, we are likely to fail. When it is at best, however, it tells you of our greatness and encourages us by saying things like, I'm the best, and yes, I can. Effective listening also means discarding anything negative or detrimental to our personal growth. We must choose to listen to the voices that encourage and empower us and let other ones go.
Great job, Mr. So obviously communication does not just mean how we talk to other people. It's also the things that we say to ourselves, right? So listening to ourselves and how we feel is important, but we want to choose the good things to listen to and get rid of the stuff that's not so good for us, right? For example, let's say you're trying something new. Like maybe it's just even in this class right now. Maybe you're afraid to raise your hand and read because you might think that you might mess up or some of the words seem a little bit challenging, right? So instead of focusing on negative thoughts that make it harder for us, we want to focus on words like, yes, I can, and I can do it. And even if we're nervous, we push ourselves to try anyways, right? Listening to the good thoughts in our head, right? Who can give me some good thoughts that we want to say to ourselves every day to help us get stronger? The thoughts that we want to listen to. Who has one? Miss Zaira, go ahead, ma'am.
To believe in ourselves, that anything that could be easy, but not hard.
Perfect. Believing in ourselves. That's a great one. What else should we say to ourselves? So let's say we say, yes, I can, right? Or I'm smart. Someone give me another one. Mr. Jordy, go ahead.
Is number one is I can do this. And number two is never give up.
Those are awesome, Mr. Jordy. Nice job. So always pushing ourselves to never give up. That's a great one. Mr. Do you have one? Mr. can you hear me okay? Go ahead. Give me an answer. One more thing. It could be super specific.
So I couldn't hear you when you were talking about the question. Can you please repeat it?
Sure. So we're talking about what are some things that we want to say, positive things that we want to listen to that we tell ourselves, right? So we want to ignore those things like, no, I can't, or this is too hard, right? What are some positive things that you want to say to yourself instead?
I can do anything.
Perfect. Great answer. All right. So we're going to move on to the next paragraph. I'll read this one. So the next task, we'll make sure that you can hear. The next crucial task in developing good listening skills is to not only hear, but actually listen to others. When our parents or our teachers communicate with us, it is easy to hear what they say. That is, sometimes it's not easy to listen to them. The same occurs with our siblings, our mentors, and our friends. As we said before, we can't listen without hearing, but we can hear without listening. Hearing is a passive process, but on the other hand, listening is an active process that we can turn on and off. This means we only listen when we choose to, but listening also requires a response by listeners, which makes communication an interactive process. As listeners, we can respond by nodding our heads, by maintaining eye contact, and by using different sounds like or which I wouldn't recommend those two. So what this part is saying right here is that listening, right? You could be listening, but to be a leader and a good communicator, you need to show the other person that you're paying attention, right? So for example, if Mr. is telling me about a story, right? Maybe it's something that he did in school or a project that he's working on. If I'm looking around the room and I'm, turning my head, I might be listening, but do I look like I'm paying attention to what he's saying? No, right? So part of being a good listener is showing the other person that you're paying attention. Maybe it's happened to you guys in school one time or to one of your friends where the teacher's explaining something and they call on you or they call on your friend because it doesn't look like you're paying attention, right? And you might have even heard the answer, But because you're not looking and you're not showing that kind of respect, that good eye contact, it doesn't look like you're listening. So as leaders and good communicators, we always want to show the other person that we're paying attention, right? For example, right now I can tell Mr. is showing awesome focus. He's got his eyes forward on the screen. Ms. Zaira too. Mr. Jordy looks like we might be off to the side on his camera, but he's doing a great job too. All right. What are some other ways you can show somebody that you're listening? Does anybody know? So we can look them in the eyes. What else? Mr. Go ahead.
We can ask good questions.
Perfect. That's an awesome answer, Mr. So not just sitting there and nodding your head, right? But actually telling them back what they said or asking them questions about what they're saying. If Mr. is telling me about his school project and I'm sitting there just nodding, looking like I'm about to fall asleep, that's not good listening. But I might ask him, what's your project about? Or did you look it up this way? Or did you read it in a book? Does that make sense? Asking questions about it. Ms. Zaira, did you have an answer too? Go ahead, ma'am.
Stand tall.
Standing tall, good one. That all goes together with leadership, right? The 4 things that we always talk about in leadership: eye contact, stand tall, clear voice, and smile. Those are all also really great ways to show people that we're listening. So great answers. All right, we're gonna move on to this next paragraph. Oh, the mouse doesn't want to slide. There we go. So there are 4 basic kinds of active listening responses: reflective, probing, supportive, and advising. Reflective is restating the message we received to verify that we fully understood what the speaker meant. Probing is when we request more information, usually by asking questions, like Mr. was just talking about. Supportive responses are when the listener emphasizes with the speaker or his or her situation. And advising is when we offer new information to try to change the person's perception of his or her situation. Right, so these are all really big words and terms, but they're all super important too. Any kind of conversation that you have with somebody, to listen to them, we want to use these different types of responses. So one of them was the question, like Mr. said, but let's start from the top. So reflective, and the example here, a reflective response would be, you don't like the dentist. So for example, if I said to Mr. Let's see, we'll just use the example here. I don't want to go to the dentist. Mr. saying, you don't like this dentist. Sort of just like saying back to them what they said. Let's say a little kid tells you that they lost a tooth, right? You can get excited and say, wow, you lost a tooth, right? Does that make sense? Does anybody else have an example? I know this is a tough one, but. So let's say someone tells you it's their birthday. What would you say? Mr. Jordy.
It's happy birthday, and
that's a good one. That's simple. That's all the reflective one is, right? Just telling back to them what they said, right? So next one, probing response. That means asking a question, right? So if we'll use the birthday example, so I think it makes sense. If a little kid tells you that it's their birthday's coming up, right? So reflective would be, awesome, your birthday's coming up. The probing response might be, when's your birthday? Or did you ask for anything cool for your birthday? Right? Asking questions like Mr. talked about, that really shows that you care, and the person is going to be really happy that you care about what they're talking about. Have you ever tried to tell somebody a story, and instead of really paying attention, they kind of just sit there, they're looking around, they might nod, but you can tell they're not really listening? How does that make you feel? Good or not so good?
Not so good.
Good. Our goal as leaders and good communicators, do we want to make people feel bad, or do we want to make people feel awesome?
We want people to feel awesome.
Good, exactly. So that's one of the really awesome ways to do it. The next one, supportive response, would be finding a way to support what the person said, but not just repeating it back to them, right? It's a little bit more complicated of an answer. So this one says, I don't want to go to the dentist. And this one says, going to the dentist isn't fun. I don't blame you for not wanting to go. So supporting what the person said and showing them that you're listening. And then the last one, an advising response would be, going to the dentist will help you keep your teeth healthy, right? So instead of just agreeing with them, it's, you understand what they're talking about, but you want to help them to find a way to get past it, right? Does that make sense? Good. We'll move on to the next piece. So it is truly not everything we hear from others is empowering to us. It is true. I'm going to read that again. It is true that not everything we hear from others is empowering for us. That's why we must practice discarding negative comments while listening to the positive, constructive input we receive. We must create a habit of listening to our parents, teachers, and mentors as long as their words empower and encourage our personal growth, even if we don't like what they say. But when others talk down our efforts or attempt to belittle us with their words, we must ignore them and move on to find different voices to listen to, one that aims to empower us and help us grow. So this piece is really important, right? It's really important that we listen to other people. That's what we've been talking about all day today. But there's things that we want to listen to, but then not let them affect us, right? We want to have like a big force field around us, right? And we need to judge everything that we hear. And if we know something is negative, we let it bounce off the force field. We hear it, we see it, but we know it's not good for us and we don't let it affect us. But when it's something that's positive and can help us, we want to listen to it and use it to help make us stronger, right? So for example, if you have a friend or somebody that you know in school that tells you that you can't do something, right? Do we want to listen to that or push it away?
Push it away.
Push it away,
Push it
right? We
away.
don't want those negative thoughts. But when it comes to positive thoughts, like let's say mom or dad tell you that you need to go brush your teeth or clean your room. We might not always like that, but if we know that it's positive and good for us, then we still choose to follow it, right? We listen to the things that we know are good for us because sometimes it might be hard to make good decisions on our own. That's why we have people in our lives who help us and support us and push us to get stronger, right? Does that make sense? Especially at your age, you guys have your teachers, you have your parents, and you know that those people care about you and want to push you to get stronger. So we choose to listen to them, even if we know that it's something we might not always want to do, right? All right, next paragraph. Let's have Mr. Do you want to read this one?
Sure. When we are confronted with a challenge in life, the first step in solving it is listening to the details that describe the situation. Sometimes the better solution to the problem lies in our willingness to listen. If people would practice better listening skills, surely most relationships and family issues would be resolved. Remember that when people don't pay attention to us, we feel neglected and unimportant. But when they listen to us attentively, we feel they really care for us. Likewise, when we don't listen to others, we're telling them that they are not important to us. While when we listen to them, we're showing them respect, courtesy, genuine appreciation, and love.
Good, nice job, Mr. Lots of big words in this one, and you guys are doing a great job reading through a level 10. And how old are you guys? Are all 9 or younger, right? Is anyone 10? You guys are doing a great job taking on that challenge. All right, so obviously this one is super important. When we care about other people, it's important that we show them that we care, right? You can say you care about somebody or that you love them, but it's more important that we show. Actions speak louder than words, right? Being good listeners is important to that. And then I will read these next few. We must learn to listen to society. In our world today and in our society, we hear many things from different sources: television, radio, newspapers, music. We are constantly bombarded by all sorts of messages. It's very important that we remain aware and carefully select which of these messages to listen to, because what we listen to will influence our actions and therefore our results. As always, we should choose what benefits us and discard what doesn't. When we hear music that describes violence or insults, we should change the radio station until we find a positive, empowering message to listen to. So this is exactly what we were just talking about with parents and mentors and friends, just on a bigger scale, right? So we're gonna hear things all the time, whether it's in the news, on the radio, in movies, on our favorite television shows, right? So now sometimes it's just for entertainment and it's just for fun, right? Does anyone here have a favorite TV show? Nobody? Mr. Jordy, what's your favorite TV show?
It is SpongeBob SquarePants.
SpongeBob, I love it. So as leaders, right, our goal is to pick the good things from that and listen to it. But if we know that something is not good for us, we want to push it away, just like everything else, right? We might hear all of it, but we choose to listen to and hone in on the positive pieces, right? All right, next. Today, young people are immensely influenced by what they hear and see in society. We tend to absorb so much of it in our lives, and it can even change the way that we talk, act, dress, or even walk. Adults must become involved in their lives so that we know what they're listening to on the radio, what they're seeing on TV, or sharing with their peers. Good. So this one is talking about what the adults would do, right? So helping to set a good example for kids. But you guys can still be the leaders and do that too, right? So even though we're not grown-ups yet, we might have a smaller area that we can affect. But let's say you guys are on a Zoom call with your teacher, or you guys are in class. If you're friends with somebody and that person is being silly, or they're not focused and they're not doing their schoolwork, but they see, even if you don't say anything to them, if they look over and they see that you're taking notes and you're paying attention and you're being a really good listener to the teacher, that might have an impact on your friend to say, oh, what I'm doing isn't funny, right? Because my friends aren't laughing, they're still paying attention, right? So just doing that and setting a good example is a really good way to do this. And you can be the positive influence to somebody else, right? And help give them something good to listen to. All right, next. Beyond listening to society, it's also very important to listen to our world itself. This entails not only listening to other human beings and societies besides our own, but also Mother Nature and all of its animals and plants. In the past 50 years, technology has afforded us the possibility of constantly communicating with the world. We see and hear what's happening around the world, even as events unfold. Unfortunately, most of the time what we experience is bad news, but we ought to practice the habit of searching for good news and listening to what positive things the world has to offer us. Instead of dwelling on the hurtful news in the world, we should find the brighter side, right? So it's important that we listen to everything that's going on. We want to know what's happening in the world. And obviously as kids, we learn a lot of that through our parents and our teachers, and we want to hear those things and, do what we can to help people who might be less fortunate than us, right? For example, last cycle and the last few cycles, we talked a little bit about helping out other people, maybe by donating food or clothes or money, maybe by picking up litter outside, right? Is there anything else that we can do to listen to the world and help everybody grow? Does anybody have an answer? Miss Zyra, go ahead, ma'am.
Plant trees.
Planting trees, that's an awesome one, right? Doing things that'll help our environment, that helps humans and everybody else, right? Does anybody else have an answer? Mr. Jordy, go ahead, sir.
I got two. Number one is take care of animals, and number two is stop pollution.
Good answers, Mr. Jordy. So all things that help the whole world, right? And while the negative things are sometimes important to talk about, we want to focus on making them better and not just being sad that they're not good. Does that make sense? So listening to the world, finding ways to help it, and also remembering that there's a lot of amazing and awesome things about the world. There's tons of awesome people, right? Like you guys. We have a great team here at Mastery. There's awesome people all around the world. There's always great things going on and people doing what they can to help each other. So we want to focus on that piece too, right? And not just always the sad or the negative things. Choosing to listen to the positive, whether it's just our parents and mentors, our teachers, our friends, the world itself, and all the people around us, right? So great job today. You guys did such an awesome job as usual with answering the questions, not being afraid to ask questions when they come up. So listening is a super important skill. And I know that all of you guys have it because you're already doing a great job showing it here. Let me just pull us back up on the screen. So just by being here in this meeting shows the amount of listening and communication skills that you guys have. You want to get stronger, right? You tune in and we learn together as a team every single week. You guys learn, I learn from you guys because you're all super smart and have some great answers to the questions. So before we go, does anybody have any questions about what we talked about listening, about ways that we could be good listeners and help each other?
I don't have any questions.
I know you guys are super smart and already have all the answers. We're all still here and learning, so nice job. Well, great job today. Couple of things for this weekend as far as practicing being good listeners, right? So we can talk about it, but if you don't put it into practice, it doesn't really do anything, right? So communication tests, right? Last week we talked about how we looked, focusing on our posture, right? With Mr. Russo. Did anyone practice that last week? Standing taller and looking like a leader? Good. So this week I want you to practice the other side of communication, listening to what other people have to say and watching their body language and how they stand in their posture, right? So when people are talking to us, especially this weekend, instead of just listening to what they have to say, I want you to focus on showing them that you're listening. Do you remember some of the ways that we can do that? So one of the ways is looking them in the eyes. Mr. Alm had an awesome answer, right? Asking them questions about what they're talking about, right? Not just adding in what we want to say, but focusing on what they're speaking about and asking them questions or repeating what they have to say. Does that make sense? Good, perfect. So those are your two main things that I want you to focus on. Look people in the eyes when they're talking to us to really show that we're listening, and ask them questions about what they're saying. Right? For example, if mom and dad say, can you go clean your room? And you're just like, yeah, whatever, I'll do later. Right? Instead, look them in the eyes, nod, and say, yes, where do you want me to put this? Or how long do you want me to do it? How fast can I do it? Does that make sense? Asking people questions while they're talking to us to really show that we're paying attention. Right? School is also a really great place to practice that. Your teacher will super appreciate it if you have good listening in school too. All right, does anybody have any questions or anything to add? All right, you guys did an awesome job today. I hope everybody has a great weekend. All right, keep practicing, and next week, we're gonna move on to how we talk and physically communicate with other people. All right, great job today. I will see everybody soon. Let's put our hands in. We're gonna end together as a team. Say, yes, I can on 3. Ready, 1? Oh, go ahead and unmute. I wanna hear all your loud, strong voices. Ready, on 3. 1, 2, 3. Yes, I can.
Yes, I can.
Nice job. Have a great weekend, team.
You
Bye.
Bye.